Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again here at Soulbound Studios. We're doing another live Q&A today, talking about part 2 of the tribes. The first thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is actually something that I think does a good job of showing that we are in fact listening to you guys. As you know, or may not know if this is your first time joining us, we had a specific plan for how we were going to go about doing our early pre-alpha development. One of the things that we're doing as part of pre-alpha is this idea of domain and settlement selection. And domain and settlement selection was something that we wanted to do to allow our early backers to come in and claim parts of the world, the kingdoms and counties and duchies, so that they could spend the time between now and launch building up the world and helping us put in, organizations, whether that be non-profit organizations, whether that would be like businesses like guilds or schools, whether or not they were coming in as early crafters in the world. We made a change. We actually fixed the number of kingdoms, duchies, and counties that existed on each continent, on each starting server, so that they could reliably plan around that between now and the time of launch. Similar to that, we had originally planned for there to be a random set of biomes, and that there would be random tribes distributed across the servers in order to provide flavor and variety.
Yeah, a lot of variants.
A lot of variants. But there was a forum post that came up last week which got a lot of attention called Limited Tribes at Launch. I want to call that out. There was some very good discussion in there, and ultimately the discussion they had and the discussion that we had internally brought up kind of 6 problems that we felt like we wanted to address. This is a formal announcement that for the sake of allowing you guys to build the community that you want to and to address all these problems, we are going to have a fixed 8 tribes on every server at launch, and they will be the same 8 tribes. That's not to say that the other tribes aren't in the world. They are, but you will have to discover them in order to be able to play them as playable tribes. We thought that was kind of the best overall approach, because by having fewer tribes, there are only a couple kingdoms that have doubles up, and we can make sure that those are well-balanced pairs now. It means that North America West and East aren't inclined to switch which server they're going to be on because one has a tribe they want and another doesn't. It means that as tribes are discovered on the different servers, it's exciting because that's the first time any server has seen that tribe. And it means that in some cases, the more challenging tribes can actually be saved for additional continents where it's not part of the original core set, so that as people explore and discover those, they can opt into choosing that more difficult biome. And then also, by knowing what those 8 tribes that are going to be at launch, people can invest in one of those 8 tribes and not be disappointed that the other 4 that they were looking forward to aren't going to be there at launch. So, with no further ado, the tribes that will not be there at launch, based on these, are the Yoru. The Frozen North, while interesting, is one of the more difficult biomes to survive in, with very, very little ecosystem, and they are also the most radically different and the most mid to high fantasy of all the tribes, so we thought they would be the most exciting to kind of add in. Plus the lore that we already have makes it so that they're kind of a legend among the Broodveer, and having them be something that, while they might show up periodically but not have a continent yet that's playable, gives us that ability to kind of add value there. It's the Erishe. The Erishe are a nomadic tribe, a desert tribe, and we wanted players to be able to get in and experience the game without having to kind of deal with the nomadic lifestyle initially. But, we're excited for people to discover those, and when they are discovered and people have the option, we do hope that they kind of adopt that nomadic lifestyle, because it's a really cool play style. Another one that will not be there are the Oum. The Oum, like the Erishe, are a savanna tribe. They're an equatorial tribe, and we've decided to focus more on the moist tropical environment for launch, less than the dry savanna or drier areas of the savanna, and so they fit well with the Erishe on being on another continent. They're also unrelated to any of the other tribes in terms of their lineage. And then the last one, which will not be there at launch, are the Madari. I know, right? We really like the Madari, and we felt like the Madari were a great addition to the continent, having them be the traders that are kind of sailing up the rivers and stuff like that. But the Madari lore allows them to kind of come back into the continent at any time. And it's one of those that we kind of felt like holding off a little bit on that allowed us to not only make the arrival of the Madari something interesting from a story mechanic, but one of the things that we had cut as a launch feature was kind of any kind of underwater exploration. But adding that back in around the time that the Madari are reintroduced in the world allows us to do a little bit more with underwater exploration and stuff, which we thought would give us time to focus on that after launch rather than at launch. So that one was actually kind of done for a number of different reasons. So the inverse of that then will be there. So we will have the Broodveer, the Hrothi, the Naren, the Kipik, the Weird, the Genoa, the Dross, and the Turesk. Yes. So those 8 will be there, and I hope that all of you are excited about at least a couple of those, and now you can get fully invested in the ones that will be there at launch. And again, those will be on every server. The continents will still be randomly generated. The terrains will be different. The locale and shape of the topography of the continent will be different, but the tribes and biomes will be generally the same. So with no further ado, let's dive into the questions.
Land ownership extends vertically. So if you own a plot of land, you own the minerals and the resources underneath that land as well. Yes, there are definitely going to be some tribes that have less walls, especially nomadic tribes, who won't have walls by the necessity of
being nomadic.
Not having walls.
Portable walls?
Right. I mean, if you want to call
a gate,
a cart, like setting up a fence, like this is my place.
Right. So you
no one
can
pass
set up
by.
those perimeters that you often see on war fronts. You know, the spikes.
That's true.
That's true. So maybe that. As for walled, not having walls doesn't mean you don't have defense though. I mean, some biomes offer natural defense, like
the swamp,
like the swamp or the wetlands.
Right.
The wetlands that the Tresk live in are very difficult to transport siege weaponry through. So that's a defense that a lot of tribes can't say that they have.
The parcel management system is something that's the same for all the biomes. We do that for simplicity in the mechanics, and they're all the same size. So in the Kipik environment, you actually are spot on. They own a parcel of land, and the trees that exist above that parcel of land are theirs to build upon. And we handle density by allowing them to build effectively multi-tenant housing inside those trees, like stacked apartments and stuff like that. So you'll see areas along tall trees where there are multiple residents or multiple domains on that.
One complication to that, which players should start thinking about, is how they're going to do things, how they're going to handle things like costs for new developments. If you're going to plant a tree and it's going to grow and it's going to give you more real estate, does the government get in on that action? Does the area get in on that action? Like, how does that work? Can you just grow another tree and then have more real estate? It's probably going to be largely determined by players, determined also. Something to consider. I would say that there are certainly going to be enclaves, yeah.
I think it's also tribe specific too.
Yeah.
I think there are some tribes that we know are more centrally located and tend to cluster because it's necessary for their survival, and then there's some that can afford to kind of branch out more and even settle in some of the transition biomes around. The way we generate the continents is ultimately now, with the feedback we have, is that we know what biomes there are going to be. So we set the latitude constraints for the content generation to include the latitudes that we care about. We don't include any islands. And then generate the topology and the terrain. We put in mountains, we add in forests and other things, all based on the amount of saturation in a region, how much humidity there is, what the temperature is as a result of the latitude. And that generates the biomes for us. That then ultimately leads to the formation of rivers and lakes and other really cool stuff, and watersheds. And so what we can then do is we can go in and we can take the watersheds and we can make those watersheds the counties, and we can take the biomes and divisions of the biomes along with natural barriers like mountains and other things, and use those as the division of the duchies. And then we put the kingdom boundaries on top of the duchies as more of a political thing where it makes sense that the tribe would own. And so you'll often have different transition biomes or none of these core biomes inside of a kingdom. It's not like the kingdom is just this biome. And in the case of the Broodveer and the Harathi, there is a shared biome between them. Well, different biomes, but a shared kingdom. Similar with the Genoa and the Teresk. Those are the two that have a shared kingdom. Yeah, actually, as you guys get to the point where technology allows you to sail to the other tribes, you discover new land. Once you do that, there will be new families, there will be new settlements and domains that you guys set up. There will be NPC domains and settlements there as well. And then you guys can go into character creation, use another spark of life, and create a new character and a new family, which will include that new discovered continent.
Or take over some of the non-traditional characters that already exist within that settlement.
If you have story points, you can also take over as an NPC and just become part of that settlement.
And keep in mind, you don't have to kill your current character to do this. You don't have to kill yourself.
No.
But you can if you want.
Right. We're just going to tell you to explore and find out on that one.
You just have to wait and see.
You just have to wait and see. We separated those up into Tier 1 and Tier 2 mounts so that when you actually get into the game, you'll have a Tier 1 token or a Tier 2 token, and you will be able to go and you will choose whether or not you want a tier token from, or a mount using your tier token from your current biome, the original one, or any biome. So if you want to find out whether or not the War Tricyn is effective inside the rainforest, that is your choice.
Yeah, right.
What kind of mounts can you see then? And before you say anything, I'm going to steal oversized snail
I was not gonna say it.
and water moccasin.
Not a turtle, but something with similar properties of having some sort of shell or hardened.
So you
plating
realize that turtles are slow, right? And if the idea is to allow for fast transportation, picking the slowest land
And they
animal.
should have a snail, clearly.
It's not just fast transportation.
Fair point.
Spiders,
Swamp
snails,
spiders.
And snakes.
and
Swamp
snakes.
spiders.
Swamp spider.
A swamp turtle spider.
Spider.
All right.
Combination.
With, yeah.
So those are some ideas.
Alligator.
Alligator.
Well, see, we
Thank
could just take a bunch of animals and mash them together however
Yeah.
we want, just like we've done before.
Spider gator.
Spider gator.
That is a cool mechanic. I would say that is not one that we were originally planning. We had originally planned on just air, in terms of air, the amount of air, the volume of air that you could get. However, having one mechanic makes the other one actually relatively easy.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some of those that I think would be actually really valuable.
Things that pose a problem that have solutions.
Cool.
Are
Yeah.
good.
Each individual NPC is different. We use a personality theory and integrate Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So every NPC has a set of core needs they need to survive, and then we start moving up into the higher levels of self-actualization and wanting to start a family and wanting to have an occupation and things like that. And they will do what they need to do in order to meet those needs. If they are one that is very self-actualized and has a strong personal belief and is tightly connected to culture, then yes, they will ignore you if you tell them to do something that's against their religious or cultural values. But it does vary individually from NPC to NPC, so it's not a uniform thing, and some cultures are going to be stronger at enforcing these than the others. The Naren, for example, are far more cultural religious than, like, let's say the Harathi, and so if you are not a member of the Vittori and you are a Naren, then they will perhaps respond to you more strongly. You would need to convince them that there is a reason to switch, which is going to be difficult to do. And you'd also have to solicit people from other areas, and you as the players would also have to switch religions, and kind of, it would have to happen over time. It's not going to be an immediate thing. The NPCs don't necessarily care whether or not their leader is a different culture than they are, but they will care if the culture of their leader impacts their way of life. And if it prevents them from meeting their hierarchy of needs, if a sudden change causes them to, for example, no longer be able to eat meat, if like a law is passed that they can't do that, and that prevents them from being able to get food for their family, then they're going to be upset, and then they're going to rebel against that. So not directly, but indirectly, definitely. The culture in any society is fluid. It's not something that's predefined. And we want this to be true in the game as well. So what we've written up in terms of our lore and culture is really what we want there to be at the beginning, but we have every expectation that the culture in these different settlements and even within the biomes themselves will change over time. If a settlement is purely PC based, then obviously they're going to define their own culture as players and as characters. If you mix and match, if it's a combination of player characters and NPCs, and you do things like start a lumber mill inside of the forest, the Kipik are definitely going to respond to you. You have two parents, each one of them has their own culture and religion, and as part of the child contract, you'll define as what the culture and religion that child is going to be raised under, and then when they become of age or when a player takes over, it's assumed that they are that religion and that culture. And that has nothing to do with the bloodline benefits, so it doesn't have anything to do with the passive bonuses that we've given to them in terms of like their ability to have low light or dark vision.
Right.
Yeah. Those things are entirely bloodline based, and there is a system in place for that, but we kind of want you guys to explore and find that out for yourselves. There will definitely be diseases that people try and use offensively. I feel like tribe-specific diseases and the effects and the causes of diseases is something that we want to leave up to the story. Within the kingdoms where you have multiple tribes, the king will be representative of one of those, and when the king selects the region, he'll get to pick among the tribes that are native to that region which of them he wants to actually play. Below him, the dukes will be made up of the different tribes. And so some will be, for example, in the case of the Hrothi and Broodveer, some dukes will be Hrothi, some dukes will be Broodveer, depending upon which biome within the kingdom they lie in. And then from there, it's just a question of how the counts pan out. But in general, there will be some choice related to the transition biome they're in. And when a leader dies, for example, let's say that the king of the Broodveer and the Hrothi dies, and they had no heir, then in theory there would be a power vacuum, and we would need to figure out who the next king is going to be. And what we incorporated into the system is that among the dukes underneath them, we would basically take a majority vote of the ones, not a majority vote, we would look, the system will actually look at how many of them are of which culture, and then based on that will determine the actual casus belli mechanics. So if the majority of dukes are Broodveer, then it would use the Broodveer method of determining. If the majority of them are Hrothi, then of course then it would fall into whichever one of the dukes is the oldest. All the mechanics are still there, because if you are even Naren and you go out and you kill some well-known creature or something like that, and it's part of the story and that sort of thing, then it will add to your reputation and fame. But we will weight those depending upon what tribe you are. So, you know, creating a really cool invention, you gain reputation and fame for crafting and stuff like that. If you are a member of the Kipik or the Naren, then that will potentially have more value than, let's say, if you're Genoan. And
it's funny that he said Genoan, though, because you also advance politically
right
through your feats. And so killing things would both have a result fame-wise. You killed a hard creature that the story recognized as important, but also you just potentially rose in political means. 1, 2, 3.
There we go, nailed it.
Nailed it.
See you guys next time.
Cool.